Hello and thanks for joining me on Putting Nutrition First in Zambia. It's always a thrill to be with you. I'm your host, Josie Perry. On the show today, Musonda Mofu from the National Food and Nutrition Commission talks about the ongoing nutrition research with promising spin-offs for the entire nation. Join me right after this item.
I'm Dr. Reida Habulembe Mgode. I work for National Food and Nutrition Commission. I'm the coordinator for the Food Consumption Survey. The Food Consumption Survey, actually, what we are trying to do is to assess the eating patterns of the population, and we are going to do it in two ways. Nationwide, actually, we are targeting about 5,280 households, which brings us to about 528 per province. And what will happen is that in each province, there are 44 clusters that we selected to work in. And in each of these 4 clusters, we are going to target 12 households. Actually, those 12 households have already been selected by now as we are speaking. Well, the selection was random. So what we did, we sent some teams to go to the clusters that were selected. They listed the households in those areas. And then from the list, actually, we randomly selected 12 households. And these are the households that we are going to visit. And in each of these households, we are actually following up on the most vulnerable groups. So when we add up all the interviews we are going to do in all the provinces, they are going to represent the nation. So we are going to have results at provincial, at national levels. We started with listing of foods with provincial personnel who are experts in foods, and also using the households in the communities. Later, we collected what we call standard recipes, because we needed the standard recipes to have a database for us to be able to analyze the amount of food that people are consuming. And later, we went on to train the field staff who are going to collect the data in the field. And then we did the listing of the households, which I explained earlier on, where we listed all the households in the clusters, and then we chose 12 households from each of the clusters. And then after now listing, we had a group which has been working since January in the communities who are collecting social demographic data from the same households that were selected. I mean the 12 households which I talked about. So what is remaining now is actually to send teams. You have two types of teams. We have two types of teams, those who will be collecting data regarding the food consumption pattern. We call them the dietary group. And then we also have a group which is going to draw blood from the same individuals from the 12 households, and we call them the biomarker team.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Justin Chileshe. I work for the Tropical Diseases Research Center, and I'm the head of department. The department is called the Biomedical Sciences Department. My specific role in the food consumption survey is that I'm the principal investigator, together with Mr. Mofu of the National Food and Nutrition Commission. We are overseeing the two sides of the food consumption survey. I am on the biomarkers side. Mr. Mofu is on the food consumption part. As the TDRC, when we go out in the field, basically we'll be going to the households in the communities where we'll have already individuals selected to take part in this food consumption and micronutrient status survey. So what basically will be happening is that we'll be calling them to come to for example, if a place has a health facility, we call them to come to the health facility so that we can ask them a few questions and then collect their blood samples. We'll be collecting about 5 mils of blood, which is just a teaspoonful of blood. And that blood will be used for measuring these biomarkers. The biomarkers that we are targeting are vitamin A, zinc. We want to look at also inflammation status. Inflammation status, we'll look at alpha acid glycoprotein and CRP, which is a C-reactive protein. And then we'll look at the iron deficiency, and by that we look at biomarkers such as ferritin and transferrin, which are proteins that transport the iron. And when we look at those biomarkers, we are able to tell whether somebody has sufficient or they are deficient in iron, because iron is very important in taking the oxygen in the blood to the different parts of the body. The issues of confidentiality that we have put in place, nobody will know that Vanakampanda at so-and-so household has this particular status in terms of micronutrients. That will not happen, because we'll take the data as a whole and just give statistics as a country. We are workers of the Ministry of Health, and we are collecting those blood samples for the purpose of giving information about the nutrient status in the population, so that we can have as much information as possible to give us an idea of what is happening in the populations and to do programming of these nutritional interventions. And the communities, we are asking them that please, they should cooperate with us. We will be having our people with identification and a particular attire where they will be able to identify them, and they will be moving with local people from the health facilities so that they are identified, because we might have other people who might masquerade as health workers on this program.
From all our nutrition activities, the community has supported us. We have worked with them. So for us now to make our work complete, to help us to do, good programming in nutrition, we are expecting the community to agree to work with us, to give us the information that we want. We want them to sit with the enumerators that will be going in the communities and give them information. Each interview for us to understand how much food or the type of food the person consumed will take about 40 minutes to 1 hour.
Welcome back to the studio. Joining me now is Mr. Musonda Mofu. He is the Acting Executive Director of the National Food and Nutrition Commission, and we shall be talking about the National Micronutrient Status and Food Consumption Survey. Welcome to Putting Nutrition First in Zambia.
Thank you very much, Josie.
Right. From 2019, actually, you have been conducting as the National Food and Nutrition Commission what you're calling the Micronutrient Status and Food Consumption Survey. I'd like to find out, what is this survey all about and who is involved?
Thank you very much, Josie. You will recall that government has placed a great mandate on the National Food and Nutrition Commission, basically to address all forms of malnutrition. And as a commission, through our work, we've realized that the key determinants to malnutrition basically involves what type of foods that the people eat, as well as the other healthy determinants. What we have realized is that although we have prioritized to improve nutrition, there is very little information on the patterns that exist in terms of what the Zambians are eating across the country. It also may interest you to know that the last food consumption survey in this country was undertaken in 1971. So we have basically relied on all the information to design our programs and strategies for improved nutrition. So the idea to undertake the national micronutrient status and food consumption survey is premised on the fact that it has to inform strategies that have been framed in the 7th National Development Plan, in the National Sector Food and Nutrition Sector Strategic Plan, as well as other programs. So this survey involves 3 major components. The first one is to list foods that exist in the country. So we have done that. We have listed all the different foods that exist in our country. Secondly, we've also listed already the type of mixed foods that exist in the country. And the other aspect is to determine the nutrients that are contained in those foods. And now what we are doing now is to basically assess which foods are being consumed by the Zambian population in the different regions of the country. And the survey basically is looking at population level, the entire country.
All right. Before we go into the details, I would like to find out who are you working with as the National Food and Nutrition Commission? Because to carry out something of this magnitude, there should be other organizations involved.
Exactly, yeah. So the National Food and Nutrition Commission is a principal investigator together with the Tropical Disease and Research Center that is based in Ndola, and we are being supported by the Zambia Statistical Agency, as well as the University of Zambia and the National Institute for Scientific and Industrial Research. So these are the major key stakeholders, but we also have technical assistance from Intech Center for Dietary Assessment that is based in Washington, as well as we've been supported also by Valid International from the biomarker point of view. So these are the key stakeholders that are leading in the implementation of this survey.
And who's funding you?
The financial support is coming from the Swedish government as well as the World Bank Group. So these are the major funders for this survey, and of course the Zambian government is also supporting the survey.
Thank you very much. In your earlier remarks, you talked about the last survey having taken place in 1971. Why has it taken us so long?
You need to know that this type of survey is a very expensive undertaking, and it is important to appreciate because of the complexity, especially in the type of methodologies that are used to understand what Zambians are eating and the micronutrient status. You need to know that food is simply a vehicle for nutrients. So when individuals consume the food, the body breaks down that into nutrients. So we need now to detect at cellular level in the body, in the blood, into the system, the type of nutrients that have moved from the food into the system. And that is what complicates and makes the survey very expensive, because most of our laboratories in the country are unable to handle the detailed analysis of the nutrients that are contained in the body or in the blood. So it is mainly due to cost implications. That's why it has been difficult to undertake this survey for, continuously.
Now that we have the money as a country to do this survey, what exactly is happening at community level? What activities are taking place?
So basically we started with community mobilization. That this involved, sensitizing the population that we need to assess what they are consuming or eating, as it were, and that and the importance of the exercise. So from that point of view, the communities helped us in the listing of the different types of foods that exist in those communities. So after listing the different types of foods, then we were able now to look at how people cook the food the way they do it in the different communities. So we had to undertake this type of processes within different types of parts of the country, in different communities where the different women and men in the communities were able to cook the way they cook, and we were able to document that. And that now culminated into us determining the nutrient composition of the different types of foods, the different types of dishes that exist in the country. So that is what has been happening at community level. So basically it has involved awareness creation and involving the communities in actually leading and undertaking the different types of assessments which is related to what is in what type of food exists and the methods that they use to cook the food.
Now you talked about biomarkers, and I believe when doing this type of research you will be taking blood samples from people within the community. How important is this, and what kind of support are you eliciting? So
like I indicated, eating food is one part, but to make that food be used properly by the body is another part. So we are using another type which we call basically biomarker assessment, and the biomarker we are using is blood. So we need to check in the blood if the nutrients that people have eaten, the food that people have eaten have actually been translated into nutrients. So what is involved is drawing blood, then analyzing that in the laboratory and check if the nutrients are there. So what we expect is that the communities need to support us in this way, because this is the only way we can know whether the food that we have is helping the population. And so the communities need to be aware that we are also collecting blood for the sole purpose of actually analyzing the nutrient profiles in the human bodies for us to know whether the nutrients are adequate or not, and that will help government basically to determine different programs to help our country. So we are actually requesting members of the public, members of the community to support this exercise, and that what we are doing is aimed at knowing whether the food that are existing in the country are adequate or not.
Should they be worried about the amount of blood that is being collected?
No, not necessarily, not necessarily. So basically what we are only capturing, drawing only, I should say, a very small amount of, of blood from the population, and they shouldn't get worried at all.
So when all is said and done, what do you hope to do with the information that you're going to get?
Thank you very much, Josie. The information, as indicated earlier on, we want to know, is the food that the Zambians are eating enough? So there are three parts to that. There is a list of food, the nutrients estimation, and also the type of food that people are eating. The quantities, are they enough? Once we establish that, then it will help us to refine programs, policies, and strategies to address the gaps if they exist. On the nutrient status part, we also need now to know whether the nutrients are adequate. You need to know that currently government is providing vitamin A, iron, and vitamin B9, which is folic acid, mainly to pregnant lactating women in health facilities. And the major purpose is to close the nutrient gap. But we need to estimate, is this nutrient gap still existing? Because from time immemorial, government has been providing vitamin A, iron or ferrous sulfate, and folic acid to pregnant and lactating women and under 5 children. So do we still have the gap? Should we still continue, or perhaps there are other strategies that we need to undertake? So this information will help us refine the strategies. The other aspect that we are looking at is the coverage of nutrition services. Who is receiving the services that government is providing? Sugar is fortified with vitamin A. Is everyone accessing the vitamin A? Is the vitamin A that has been distributed through sugar reaching the households? What about in the body? Is it adequate? So we need to evaluate all these things because these are strategies that government has put in place. For iodine, salt, all salt in Zambia is iodated. It has iodine. Is the iodine reaching the populations? Is it adequate in their body system? So all these are the questions that we want to answer so that government could now refine its policy and strategies on nutrition.
Who is helping you collect all this information?
So basically we have recruited over 150 enumerators. These are mainly health workers, agricultural scientists, as well as food scientists and nutritionists. So these have been properly trained to collect this type of information. And they are coming from mainly from government as well as even other organizations. So they are helping us to collect this information.
In terms of timeline, when do we expect, say, a full report or the implementation from the results that you are collecting?
Okay, so as earlier indicated, we sent out the teams into the field on 25th of January to collect the information, and our expectation that all things being equal, the information should be available by September this year. And this information will be shared to the general public and well as to start now programming using this information.
And to wrap up this interview, any last comment that you would like to make?
One of the critical things that we would like to mention is that nutrition is critical for the development of this country. You need to know that inadequate nutrition reduces productivity. Inadequate, especially if I focus on iodine, you'll see that inadequate iodine intake reduces intelligence quotient by about 13 points. So nutrition is critical, and we are encouraging the population to eat a diversified diet, as well as to support this survey, because it is a benchmark to really actually shape nutrition for this country. As you know, nutrition is a critical determinant of health.
Thanks again, Musonda Mofu, for coming onto the show, and we wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Thank you very much, Josie.
Well, that's all we had for you on today's show. Thank you for joining us. Thanks to the productions crew, I'm Josie Piri saying see you soon and God bless.